She thought she could lie to me forever. But when the truth finally surfaced, I didn't break. I planned. I was going to make her feel every ounce of the betrayal she had dealt me. And I wasn't doing it alone. I teamed up with someone she never saw coming. Someone who wanted revenge just as much as I did. Curious how it all played out? Keep listening. I've always been the kind of person who gives others the benefit of the doubt. Gloria and I had been together for 5 years, 3 of those as husband and wife. Life felt steady, predictable, maybe even comfortable. Gloria worked in marketing, and I had a solid job as a financial consultant. We weren't rich, but we got by just fine. We treated ourselves to a nice dinner once in a while, took the occasional vacation, and spent lazy Sundays binging TV shows together. But then, a few months ago, things started changing. It was subtle at first. Gloria began working late more often, always insisting that her team needed her or everything would fall apart. Fine. Work is work. But it wasn't just her hours. It was how she acted when she got home that made me uneasy. The Gloria I knew used to collapse on the couch after a long day, venting about every little frustration at the office. Now, she barely spoke to me. She'd give me a quick peck on the lips, like it was just another item on her to-do list, before immediately grabbing her phone or heading for the shower. It was like the moment she stepped through the door, she was looking for a way to get away from me. Everyone keeps their phone close, I get it. But suddenly, Gloria guarded hers like it held government secrets. If it so much as buzzed when I was nearby, she'd snatch it up in an instant, like she was afraid I might see something I shouldn't. One night, I suggested we go out to dinner, just the 2 of us. It had been a while since we spent quality time together, and I wanted her to know I missed her. But before I even got the words out, she shot me down. "I can't, babe," she said. "There's an urgent meeting tonight." Dexter dragged things out again. You know how he is. She let out a small laugh, but it felt forced, like she was just playing a role. Then, before I could say anything, she kissed my cheek, grabbed her purse, and was out the door. I stood there, staring after her, feeling something I couldn't quite name. Dexter. She'd mentioned him before, just some guy on her team. Supposedly nothing important. But the way she said his name this time made my stomach tighten. Still, I didn't want to jump to conclusions. I had no proof of anything. So, I pushed the thought away. And then, a few days later, Tessa, the neighbor from across the hall, showed up at my door. Tessa is one of those people who always knows everyone's business, whether you want her to or not. "Hey, Richard, got a minute?" she asked, flashing her usual nosy grin. I leaned against the doorframe, already bracing myself for whatever gossip she was about to unload. Subtlety had never been her strong suit. "So, I was out with some friends last night," she said, lowering her voice like she was about to share something scandalous. "And I think I saw Gloria. She was at that new Italian place downtown. You know, La Sorella." I frowned. Gloria had told me she'd been working late. Tessa raised an eyebrow, like she wasn't buying that story for a second. "Well," Tessa went on, her tone casual but her eyes sharp, "she wasn't alone. There was a guy with her, tall, dark hair, kind of handsome. They looked pretty close." She shrugged like it was just an offhand comment, but her words sank deep, planting a doubt I couldn't shake. I tried to brush it off, but it clung to me for the rest of the day, sitting heavy in my chest. That evening, I watched Gloria more closely. When I casually asked how work had been, she barely looked at me. "Oh, the usual," she mumbled, her eyes locked onto her phone, as if I wasn't even in the room. I wanted to ask her outright, demand to know if Tessa was telling the truth, but what was I supposed to say? That the neighbor who loves to gossip saw her out with some guy? It didn't feel like enough. I needed something real, something undeniable. And, as it turned out, that proof came faster than I expected. One night, Gloria left her phone on the kitchen counter before heading to the backyard. Normally, I would never even think of looking through it. But something inside me cracked. Maybe it was the way she had been acting. Maybe it was Tessa's words still ringing in my ears. Or maybe I was just sick of feeling like I was the only one who didn't know what was happening in my own marriage. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for, just something, anything, to explain why everything felt so off. And then, right there, sitting at the top of her notifications, was a message from Dexter. "You looked amazing. Can't wait for Friday." I stared at the screen, hoping, praying, that I was reading it wrong. That there was some reasonable explanation. But deep down, I already knew. Before I could stop myself, I tapped into her photo gallery. My stomach twisted as I scrolled. There they were, Gloria and Dexter, posing together at what looked like a work event. But these weren't just casual group photos. They were standing close, arms wrapped around each other, smiling like they shared some secret. And there she was in that red dress. The one she knew I loved. The one she hadn't worn for me in months. The worst part? This was an event I hadn't even been invited to. She had told me it was just a small team gathering, nothing I'd be interested in. But in these pictures, she wasn't just attending, she was with him, holding on to him like he was the only thing in the world that mattered. I locked the phone and set it back on the counter just as I heard the sliding glass doors from the backyard open. My thoughts swirled, anger, hurt, disbelief, all tangled together in a storm I couldn't control. But I needed to decide what I was going to do. A few minutes later, she flashed me a quick, easy smile, the kind that used to feel warm and familiar. "What do you want to do for dinner?" she asked. "Not hungry," I muttered, brushing past her and heading for the living room. And in that moment, it hit me. The Gloria I had married, the woman I had loved, built a life with, was gone. In her place was someone else entirely. Someone who could look me in the eye and lie as easily as breathing. But I wasn't ready to confront her. Not until I figured out exactly how I wanted to handle this. Because one thing was certain, I couldn't just let this slide. Those pictures had shattered everything I thought I knew. It wasn't just the betrayal itself, it was the way she had lied so easily. She had come home from him, from Dexter, acting like nothing had happened, like our marriage was still intact, like she still cared. I slammed my fist against the table, letting the sting of pain ground me, even if only for a second. My thoughts raced. For months, I had felt her slipping away, and every time I reached out, hoping to pull her back, she just kept drifting further. She wasn't just slipping away, she was running. Running straight into Dexter's arms, while I sat at home, blind and trusting. I could hear her moving around outside the bathroom, probably getting ready for bed like it was just another normal night, like nothing had changed. How could she look me in the eye and lie? How could she crawl into our bed, sleep beside me, knowing what she had done? She didn't know that I had found out, not yet. And that was the only advantage I had. The next day, I reached out to Chester, one of the only people I could trust. We had known each other since we were kids. I shot him a text, asking if he had time for a drink, and within an hour, we were sitting in a dimly lit dive bar downtown. Chester watched me down my second shot and gave me a hard look. "All right, man. What's going on?" I didn't hold back. I told him everything, the late nights, the sudden obsession with her phone, the pictures, the message from Dexter. Saying it all out loud made my blood boil all over again. It made everything feel even more real. When I finished, Chester leaned back in his chair, shaking his head. "Damn, man. That's rough. I don't even know what to say." I let out a bitter laugh. "Yeah, join the club." His face hardened. "You've got to leave her, Richard. She's not worth it. If she's pulling this crap on you now, she'll do it again. Cut your losses. File for divorce. Get out." He was right. He should have been right. But it didn't feel that simple. Walking away felt like letting her off easy, like she'd get to move on without facing any consequences. And that wasn't enough. Not after what she had put me through. "I'm not walking away from this." "Not yet," I said, shaking my head slowly. Chester raised an eyebrow. "What are you thinking?" I leaned in, my voice low. "Beatrix," oddly. Chester's eyes widened. Then he let out a sharp laugh. "Beatrix? You serious?" "Man, Gloria hates her." Exactly. Beatrix had always been a sore spot for Gloria. They used to be friends, but there was always tension whenever Beatrix was around me. Nothing had ever happened between us, but Gloria had sensed the chemistry. Beatrix had this way about her, playful, flirty, always pushing the line just enough to get under Gloria's skin. It drove Gloria crazy. We had argued about Beatrix more times than I could count, even though I had always kept things respectful. But now, I was done being the good guy. Chester shook his head with a knowing grin. "You do know Beatrix has always had a thing for you, right?" I smirked. "I know. This is gonna get messy," he warned. "That's the point," I said, my voice dark. Messy was what Gloria deserved. Chester shot me a skeptical look, but didn't argue. "Just be careful, man. This kind of thing never ends well." That night, after I got back from the bar, I lay in bed beside Gloria, staring at the ceiling while she slept soundly next to me. I felt like a stranger in my own life. Part of me wanted to shake her awake, shove the pictures in her face, and demand an explanation. But deep down, I already knew there was nothing she could say that would make this right. So I started planning. Beatrix had always made her interest clear. a lingering touch, a flirty comment. That knowing smile she'd flash when Gloria wasn't looking. Gloria hated it. And for years, I had pushed Beatrix away out of respect for my marriage. But now? Now, I was done playing the fool. I pulled out my phone, opened Beatrix's contact, and hesitated. This wasn't me. I wasn't the kind of person who used people like chess pieces in a revenge game. But Gloria had changed me. She had turned me into someone I barely recognized. And if this was what it took to make her feel even a fraction of the pain she had put me through, then so be it. I typed out a quick message. Hey, it's been a while. We should catch up sometime. My thumb hovered over the send button. For a split second, I considered deleting it. But then, before I could second-guess myself, I pressed send. The message delivered instantly. I knew Beatrix would respond. She always did. And when she did, Gloria was going to regret every lie, every betrayal. It took less than an hour for her reply to come in. Hey, stranger. Long time no see. I'd love to catch up. Coffee sometime? I smirked at the screen. Too easy. Beatrix had always been eager when it came to me, always ready with that sly smile and lingering glances. Gloria had sensed it early on and hated Beatrix for it. I had always downplayed it, shrugged it off, acted oblivious. But not this time. This time, I was walking straight into the exact scenario Gloria had feared all along. We met at a small coffee shop downtown, the kind with exposed brick walls and overpriced lattes that attracted more Instagram influencers than coffee lovers. I spotted Beatrix before she saw me. She had her long blonde hair down, tight jeans hugging her figure, and a low-cut blouse that made it clear she wasn't here for just coffee. She knew exactly what she was doing. Richard, she called out, her face lighting up as I approached. She pulled me into a hug that lingered just a second too long, her perfume filling the space between us with a sweet, musky scent. Beatrix, I greeted her with a slow smile. You look amazing. She laughed, brushing her hair behind her ear the way she always did when she wanted to be noticed. Oh, stop. You haven't changed a bit. Conversation flowed easily, slipping between old memories and inside jokes like no time had passed. Beatrix had a habit of leaning in too close, touching my arm at every chance. And this time, I didn't pull away. I played right into it, complimenting her laugh, her smile, the way she still had that same spark. We stayed for over an hour, and by the time we left, I could see it in her eyes. A spark. More like a small fire. As we said goodbye, Beatrix hugged me again, her lips brushing my cheek as she whispered, we should do this again soon. Walking back to my car, I knew she was hooked. The game had officially begun. A few days later, I sent her another text. How about dinner? My treat. I know a spot you'll love. She didn't even hesitate. Sounds perfect. Can't wait. That's when I knew I had her exactly where I wanted her. Gloria's best friend was practically begging for my attention. I was more than willing to give it. We met at an upscale restaurant, the kind with dim lighting, velvet booths, and a wine list longer than the actual menu. Beatrix slipping through the door like she owned the place. She wore a fitted black dress that hugged every curve, her confidence dialed up to match the setting. You clean up nice, I teased as she slid into the seat across from me. She grinned, tilting her head. You don't look too bad yourself. Dinner felt like a slow, seductive dance. This time, Beatrix's flirtation wasn't just playful, it was deliberate. Every move, every glance, every brush of her fingers against mine was intentional. And I didn't pull away. Instead, I met her energy, matching her smirks, holding eye contact just a second longer than necessary, letting the tension build between us like a slow burn. Midway through the meal, Beatrix leaned in, her voice dipping to a soft whisper. You know, Richard, I've always had a thing for you. Feigning surprise, I raised an eyebrow. Really? I had no idea. Oh, come on. She smirked, her eyes glinting with mischief. You had to have known, she murmured, coaxing, testing the waters. Then she sighed, swirling her wine. Gloria never treated you the way she should have. Honestly, I always thought she took you for granted. I took a slow sip of my own glass, letting her words hang between us, letting her think she was peeling away my defenses. You might be right about that, I admitted, watching her expression shift ever so slightly. Beatrix smiled, sliding her hand over mine. I mean it, Richard. You're amazing. Any woman would be lucky to have you. I chuckled, shaking my head just enough to seem modest. If only you'd told me that sooner. Her eyes widened just a bit, just enough. A hopeful spark. The kind that pushes people toward reckless decisions. And back at home, Gloria was beginning to notice the shift. She had started watching me more closely, throwing out questions, testing my responses, trying to decode what was different about me. "You seem different lately," she said one night, her voice careful, measured. "Is everything okay?" "Yeah, everything's fine," I answered easily. "Why wouldn't it be?" She frowned slightly, narrowing her eyes. "I don't know. You just seem distant." I shrugged. "Maybe I'm just tired." It was a weak excuse, but it was enough. For now. The more I pulled away, the more suspicious she became. I can see it in the way her eyes lingered on me longer than usual, in the way her questions grew sharper, more pointed. "Where were you tonight?" she asked one evening when I came home later than usual. "With Chester," I said smoothly. "You know how he is. 1 beer turns into 5. She didn't look convinced. But what could she say? If she wanted to accuse me of anything, she'd have to confront her own guilt first. So I kept things vague. Just enough to keep her guessing. Just enough to let the doubt creep in. Nothing too obvious. Just enough to make her squirm. I had to strike a careful balance, but I was getting the hang of it. The goal was simple: make her feel exactly what I had felt. Confused. Paranoid. Always second-guessing. Every time she glanced at her phone, every time she hesitated before asking me a question, I felt a twisted sense of satisfaction. It wasn't enough, not yet, but it was a start. And as for Beatrix, she was all in. Dinner had gone exactly as planned, and by the end of the night, she made it clear she was ready for more. As we said goodnight, she leaned in, her lips brushing my cheek, lingering just enough to leave no doubt about what she wanted. "Call me," she whispered, her breath warm against my skin. I smiled. "Count on it." Driving home that night, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: control. Gloria had no idea what was coming. Beatrix was falling deeper into my plan with every passing day. I just had to stick to my part and wait for the right moment. Our wedding anniversary arrived faster than I expected. 5 years together. 3 years married. A day meant to celebrate love, devotion. Instead, I was orchestrating something else entirely: an elaborate display of betrayal and humiliation. I spared no expense. I booked a stunning countryside villa, an elegant estate with ivy-covered walls, crystal chandeliers, and gardens straight out of a fairy tale. We invited everyone: friends, colleagues, neighbors. And, of course, Dexter. This wasn't just about hurting Gloria. It was about making sure she had an audience when the truth came crashing down. That morning, Gloria was practically glowing. She moved through the house humming, smiling, more alive than I'd seen her in months. And somehow, that made my anger burn even hotter. She wasn't excited for me. She was excited for the show we'd be putting on for everyone else. I, too, was looking forward to the night, but for entirely different reasons. The villa buzzed with guests as the evening unfolded. I played my part perfectly, greeting everyone with a warm smile, the devoted husband in full display. Gloria looked stunning in that red dress, the same one she had worn for Dexter. I stayed close to her throughout the night, my hand resting on the small of her back, whispering in her ear, playing the role. She basked in it, soaking up the compliments from her friends. "You two are perfect together. 5 years, and you're still going strong. Lucky man." I nodded along, swallowing every bitter truth I wanted to hurl back in their faces. And, of course, Beatrix was there too. She looked dangerous in a sleek black dress, smirking at me from across the room. I gave her a subtle nod. She knew exactly what to do, and exactly when to do it. Then came Dexter. I was mid-conversation with some of Gloria's coworkers when I saw her stiffen, her posture shifting ever so slightly. Her gaze flickered to the entrance. And there he was, striding in with that same smug confidence I recognized from the photos. The shift in Gloria was immediate. Her face lit up, her smile radiant in a way I hadn't seen in months. It was as if she had suddenly come alive after a long hibernation. That was it. That was all the confirmation I needed. Any lingering doubt evaporated. I clenched my jaw but forced myself to stay composed. No outbursts. No scenes. Not yet. I had a script to follow, and I intended to see it through. I made sure to greet Dexter warmly, clapping him on the shoulder, handing him a drink. Gloria watched us, her smile faltering, her eyes flickering with something unreadable. She had no idea just how much I knew. As the night wore on, I slipped away from the party unnoticed. I knew Gloria would notice. I knew she would come searching, and by the time she did, it would already be too late. Beatrix was already waiting upstairs, leaning against the bedpost with that familiar mischievous grin. "You sure about this?" she asked, though we both knew she wasn't looking for an answer. "More than sure," I muttered, shutting the door behind me. She didn't need any more convincing. Within minutes, we were tangled in the sheets, her hands exploring, her breath hot against my skin. It was wild, raw, nothing like what I had shared with Gloria. But this wasn't about passion. This was about the plan. About payback. And right on cue, the door swung open. Gloria stood frozen in the doorway. Her expression shifted, confusion, shock, then devastation. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Beatrix, completely unfazed, sat up slowly, pulling the sheet around herself like a victory banner. "Well," she said with a smirk, "now you know how it feels to be betrayed." I watched Gloria closely, waiting for the explosion. But she didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just stood there, pale and silent. And in that moment, I knew. She finally understood that I watched as it all clicked into place in her mind. The full realization that I hadn't just caught her cheating, but that I had turned the tables, humiliating her in front of the one person she despised most. "You?" she whispered, her voice unsteady. "You're disgusting." I sat up slowly, perfectly calm, and gave her the same casual smile she had flashed at me so many times before, back when she thought I was still in the dark. "Now we're even, Gloria." Her eyes burned with rage, her chest rising and falling as she struggled to find the words. But for the first time in months, I felt something close to peace. This was it. The moment I had been waiting for. The moment she finally felt what it was like to have her world yanked out from under her. Downstairs, the party carried on, the sound of clinking glasses and easy laughter drifting through the walls. They had no idea what had just happened. Not yet. But soon, she'd run back down, shaken and exposed, and the whispers would start. The humiliation would set in, just like it had for me when I first saw those photos of her and Dexter. Gloria took a step back from the doorway, her hands clenched into fists. Her eyes never left mine. She turned on her heel and stormed out, the door slamming so hard behind her that the walls trembled. Beside me, Beatrix let out a soft chuckle, lighting a cigarette with the ease of someone who had just watched the final scene of a movie she already knew the ending to. "Well, that was fun," she mused, blowing out a slow trail of smoke. I didn't respond. I lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the distant murmur of the party below. The plan had gone perfectly. I had gotten my revenge. So why did I feel nothing? No satisfaction. No triumph. Just emptiness. I had won. But at what cost? Beatrix leaned over, smirking. "You know, it won't be long before everyone knows the full story, right?" I nodded. That was part of the plan. Gloria wasn't just going to lose me. She was about to lose everything. By the time we made our way downstairs, the shift in energy was undeniable. The whispers had grown into a steady hum. People shot glances our way, some amused, others outright entertained by the unfolding drama. Beatrix, never one to waste a dramatic opportunity, moved fast. The second Gloria reappeared, red-eyed, shaken, barely keeping herself together, Beatrix stepped forward, all smiles. "Gloria," she said sweetly, her voice dripping with fake warmth. "I think it's time we clear the air, don't you?" Gloria stiffened, her jaw clenched, her eyes darting around the room. "You're not doing this here." "Oh, but I am," Beatrix said smoothly, her smile widening. "You betrayed Richard." The room went silent. Every single person was watching now, caught in the spectacle. Gloria looked like she wanted to vanish. But Beatrix wasn't done. She had come for blood. "Let's be real, Gloria," Beatrix sneered. "You threw away your marriage for some loser." She tilted her head mockingly. "What was the plan? Keep sneaking around with Dexter until Richard finally caught you? Or did you actually think you'd get away with it forever?" Gloria's eyes darted from face to face, desperate, searching for anyone who might defend her. But all she found were cold stares. No one was stepping in to save her. Beatrix turned back to the crowd, her voice loud, clear, decisive. "I'm done being friends with a backstabbing liar," she announced. "So, Gloria, consider our friendship officially over." Gloria's face crumbled. Beatrix didn't wait for an answer. With a final smirk, she turned and sauntered away, leaving Gloria standing alone, exposed, humiliated, drowning in the consequences of her own choices. And just like that, the social world Gloria had spent years carefully building began to collapse. People whispered behind her back, their smiles tight, insincere. Friends who once stood by her now distanced themselves, not wanting to get caught in the wreckage. And Dexter? He vanished the moment things got messy. just like I knew he would. The fallout didn't stop at her personal life. Word spread at her workplace, too. Gloria had always been the rising star, the one everyone admired. But now she was just the woman who wrecked her marriage for a fling with a coworker. The whispers followed her into meetings, into every hallway, trailing her like a shadow. Her once untouchable image was stained beyond repair. At first, she fought back. She tried to explain, tried to defend herself. But no one wanted to hear her side. Dexter stayed silent, unwilling to step in, and without him, she had nothing left to hold on to. She was utterly alone. When promotions were announced a few months later, their names were missing from the list. Others, people who had been their equals before, were now leapfrogging past them. The message was clear. They weren't fired, but they were done. Their careers had hit an invisible ceiling, and everyone knew it. I watched it unfold with a strange sense of detachment. She had lied, betrayed me, ripped our marriage apart without a second thought. Now, she was finally facing the consequences. She was finally feeling the weight of everything she had done. A few weeks after everything went down, I was back to focusing on what actually mattered: my career, my future. The chaos, the betrayal, the anger, I had left all of it behind. I wasn't wasting energy on people who didn't deserve it anymore. Instead, I was moving forward. And, as it turned out, the universe had a way of rewarding that. I was at my desk when my phone buzzed. David Langley, senior partner. The kind of guy who didn't waste time on small talk. "Richard, can you stop by my office?" His voice was unreadable, but I knew better than to overthink it. A few minutes later, I was sitting across from him in his glass-walled office. "I've been hearing a lot about you lately," he said, tapping his fingers on the desk. Not just in the office, but outside of it too. I didn't flinch. I knew exactly what he was referring to. Word spreads fast. "People are impressed with how you handled yourself," Langley continued. "You kept your head, stayed professional, didn't let your personal life spill into your work. That's rare." I stayed quiet, letting him talk. "I need someone like that. Someone who doesn't crack under pressure. Someone reliable. We're expanding, and I want you to step up. Senior consultant position, bigger clients, better salary." I leaned back. This wasn't just a promotion. It was proof. Proof that I had come out of this whole mess stronger, not weaker. Langley watched me carefully. "A lot of guys in your position would have let personal drama wreck their careers. But you turned it into momentum. That's exactly the kind of man I want leading my team." I let a small smile tug at the corner of my lips before extending my hand. "You won't regret it." Langley shook it firmly. "I know I won't." Walking out of his office, I felt something settle inside me. Something strange started happening after the divorce papers were finalized. At first, I thought it was just in my head, but then, I started noticing the way the women in our office were looking at me. Differently. Before, I was just Richard, the married guy. Off limits. Safe. But now, I was Richard, the newly single man with his life together, freshly untangled from a toxic marriage. And apparently, that made me very interesting. It started subtly. A lingering glance. A playful smile. A casual touch on the arm during a conversation that didn't really require one. Compliments that felt a little too personal to be strictly professional. Then came the invitations. "A few of us are grabbing drinks after work. You should come. You always bring lunch from home. Richard, let me treat you this time. You're looking really good lately. Divorce suits you." I wasn't blind. I knew what was happening. And the funny thing? Some of these women who had barely given me a second glance before, were suddenly very eager to get to know me. I could play this any way I wanted. Keep things professional. Have a little fun. Or maybe, just maybe, something real could come out of it. But one thing was certain. I was no longer the guy sitting at home, waiting for someone else to define my worth. I was calling the shots now, and I was enjoying every second of it. I had lost a toxic marriage, but I had gained everything that actually mattered. And this was just the beginning.